Welcome to Wednesdays with Willa. I am your host, Willa White, and this is my weekly podcast show that airs on my Facebook page, Willa White Medium. On Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern, you can tune in here, and it also gets shared with Lilydale Assembly. I'm a registered medium at Lilydale, and it's been my pleasure to be registered since 2003. And this is my podcast where I get to explore different spiritual topics with various guests regarding spiritualism, mediumship, healing, faith, family, and more. And I love having different guests on the show, and I'm especially delighted to have with me today Kerri Richardson. Thanks for being here today, Kerri.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks, Willa.
And those of you who don't know who Kerri Richardson is, you're going to get to know her very well over the next hour. And Kerri is a best-selling author of What Your Clutter is Trying to Tell You. She is a lifestyle coach. I guess, could I call you a clutter coach in some ways?
Sure. I call myself a clutter whisperer.
The Clutter Whisperer. There we go. So, and you also have a new book that's just come out from Clutter to Clarity. So,
Hmm.
I know that's something that people are really looking forward to receiving a bit of that insight today in our particular show. You can also tune in to the show on blogtalkradio.com/Lilydale Radio. That's an audio only version of the show. So if you want to see and hear us, then join me on Facebook. This will also be on YouTube later. And in terms of our topic today, we have clearing spiritual clutter. So it's going to be a
Hmm.
really important topic for some people who especially are wanting insight into what their clutter, what their piles are, the secrets of those piles are, and how to get from the overwhelming energy of that forward. But let's talk a little bit about you, Kerri. You can tell people some of your backstory so they can be.
Sure. Yeah, sure. So I've been coaching people really since 2002. Uh, my day job at that time was I was the managing editor of a magazine. So my background is journalism and writing. But when I was at that magazine, I worked with novice writers who were always missing deadlines, which was difficult for me because I had pages to fill in my magazine. So I would start calling them, inquiring about the status of their articles, and they would begin to tell me all the things in their life that were preventing them from focusing on writing, which is something I know they really wanted to do. And so selfishly, I started to help them redesign their life to make time for writing just because I needed their articles. And I thought, I really like doing this. I like helping people reprioritize to make their dreams happen. And so that's kind of how that was the transition into life coaching. So I figured out that that was a profession. I went into training and grew my practice at night while still working at the magazine until I was able to come out full time. And so then as I started working with people, in a very traditional life coaching sense, people would come to me with where they are versus where they wanted to be, and we would get them there. The concepts in life coaching can be really difficult to kind of wrap your hands around. It's very conceptual. And so I started to frame it in a way that people could understand. And so I would say to people, just imagine anything that's stopping you from getting where you want to be is just clutter. It's just clutter that needs to be cleared. And so once you use that word, people were like, I have clutter. And so they would come to me about their messy desks and, piles of paperwork, etc. And sure, we would start there, but that was just the doorway into the deeper soul and spiritual clutter that the physical clutter represented. And so that's what I've been doing now for many years. That's what my two books are on, my online membership community, Clutter Clear Your Life. And that's the coaching I do, that people come to me with their blocks and their obstacles, and I help them determine the spiritual message underneath.
Beautiful. I think that it's an exciting understanding, especially people are becoming more aware of clutter. We've got those TV shows, Hoarders
Yeah.
and all of that, and
Hmm.
Marie Kondo. you know,
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
oh, if it doesn't bring you joy, then
Hmm.
do this. It's so funny because sometimes in preparation for a show, I'll go to the library and sometimes I'll read the books and sometimes I don't. But I got a big old stack of clutter books because they're so. And the librarian was teasing me that I know clutter busting, clearing clutter, clutter's last stand, clutter cure, clutter be gone, all
Yeah.
the different things. And I know that you're coming at it from an energetic standpoint. And there was
Yeah.
one other book that I Stop Clutter from Stealing Your Life. They actually had spiritual affirmations
Yeah.
way to like get clear of some of the things that were burdening them and meditations. So
Hmm.
it seems like it's coming more into people's consciousness that it's not just about the stuff, it's the
Yeah.
energy of the stuff that matters.
Absolutely.
And people
Yes.
can lie, but energy doesn't.
Hmm. Exactly. That's exactly it. And so, I often call clutter a temper tantrum of the soul. And it is really our soul's way of getting our attention about deeper needs that we're not fulfilling. You know, I talk about three different types of clutter. There's simple clutter, which is what you typically think of when you think of clutter, books and papers and that kind of stuff. Simple clutter is clutter that you can easily clear and get rid of. There's not a lot tied into it. It's just making the time, which you're able to do, and get rid of it. That's the simple clutter. That's a very small percentage.
I'm glad to hear that because I was worried you were going to tell me I was going to have to get rid of my books because
No. Oh
I
my gosh, Willa.
library
It's
books, but
yeah,
the collection of books, I just can't help
you
myself.
don't have to. Yeah, here's the interesting thing about clutter. Only you get to decide what's clutter. No one else does, right? So some people might love their library of 1,000 books. It's not clutter then if you love it. Um, some people might be annoyed by their stack of 10 books, then it's clutter. So only you get to decide. People come to me all the time, like, are you going to make me get rid of all my books? And I'm like, do you love them? That's the kind of the benchmark that I use, the measuring stick. Do you love it? Do you need it? Do you use it?
Right.
And if it ticks any of those boxes, it's not clutter.
Then I'm free to go.
You're free. You can keep all of your books. You can keep-
Excellent. So simple clutter. Great.
Yeah, simple clutter is just the stuff you can easily clear. That's a small percentage of clutter because if you're coming to me to talk about your struggle with clutter of any kind, it's not simple, right? So then it's symptomatic.
Mm,
Symptomatic is all the rest. Symptomatic means there's a spiritual message underneath. So you might think it's just a stack of papers on your desk, but if you are procrastinating on it, avoiding it, dreading it, doing, suddenly laundry is very enticing and exciting to do because anything's better than the piles of paper, then there's a spiritual message in that paperwork for you. And that's what I help people uncover is what is the symptom? What is the source under the symptom? The symptom is the piles of papers. The source can be a limiting belief that you're not good with money, for example. So to get under the symptomatic clutter, we want to get to the core clutter. That's the third and the deepest kind. Those are the three main causes of symptomatic clutter, and it's limiting beliefs, it's unrealistic expectations, and it's a need for boundaries, which is really spiritual work, all three of them.
yes. Very exciting to have that broken down in those chunks to make it more
Yeah,
accessible and understandable. And
yeah.
what I'm the big takeaway I'm hearing about this is it's about what are people avoiding in
Hmm.
that clutter. So there's that like the one of the biggest things in terms of what
Yes.
are they avoiding, not just the job of clearing the clutter, but what are they
Mm-mm.
avoiding that it has to do with their limiting beliefs they have in
Yes.
relationship to money or love,
Hmm.
time.
Themselves.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's not the task that you're avoiding. I am someone, as a coach, I love to dig into things like procrastination and perfectionism and projection, my favorite P words, right? Because they are all forms of protection. And
Mm,
so when people are like, well, I'm just such a procrastinator, it's like, okay, that's a great kind of toss away label you can give yourself, or we can look into why you might be procrastinating, because there is a deeper spiritual reason why you're procrastinating. And that's what I want to help you to uncover. If you are procrastinating on going through that stack of paperwork because it has papers from your divorce 10 years ago that you haven't fully grieved, then that's the real clutter, is the grief that needs your attention. Then the paperwork becomes nothing. Your physical clutter becomes much easier to sort and clear when you deal with the spiritual clutter underneath it.
Mhm. It seems like when people are having that aha moment, do you see them immediately attack that stack, or do you see them still in that trepidation space and kind of needing to work through it, and maybe even regressing?
Yeah.
Okay, through
Yeah. It's
those aspects of it.
Yeah, I would say it's not hugely common for them to immediately dive in and start to clear it because we've uncovered the message in the mess, if you will, like the core spiritual clutter. That takes work. And so it's really interesting because it ends up happening one of two ways. When we have a conversation like this, my clients will say, okay, well, I get that there's something underneath it, but I just can't really sink my teeth into it. I'm having trouble identifying what that is. Then how I'll have them identify it is to actually dig into the physical clutter. It's kind of like gently poking the bear. We want to stir up the resistance and the frustration and the fears so we can hear them more clearly,
Mhm.
because we have been practicing for years how to muffle it and silence it through distraction, right? So if they're struggling to identify what that core clutter is, I'll have them dig into the physical clutter to stir the pot. Less about getting rid of stuff, more about awakening the message within it. Other people who really get how the deeper stuff is at play will start there. Like once we uncover that, and it's like, yeah, I can totally see how I'm doing this. Great. Let's explore that some more through some exercises and journaling and prompts so you can get into conversation with your soul to help it feel heard, acknowledged, tended to, and cared for, so it doesn't feel so scary. So then, yes, the physical piles become much easier to deal with because you are in direct communication with your spirit and not pushing it away, right? Oftentimes we're told to just suck it up and push through, quiet the monkey mind, all those things. I believe the complete opposite. Get into relationship with your resistance, because your resistance is just a fearful young part of you who needs you to show him or her that there's nothing to be afraid of, that you'll do the adulting. You're not expecting that 5-year-old to do this heavy spiritual work. So when you can get into relationship with your fear instead of run from it, you become a powerful team that there is literally no stopping you.
I think it's a very valid point that you brought up that 5-year-old, because there
Mm.
is that energy of, but I don't want to clean my room. You will
Hmm.
clean your room.
Yeah. Yeah. Not the approach, right? So it's, I don't want to clean my room. I know, honey. I know it's not the funnest, but let's do it for like 15 minutes and then we'll see how we feel. Right? So it's just a gentle, because that young part of us loves what's familiar. And anything different we ask it to do there's going to be resistance. Like, no, I don't know how to do that. I talk to people all the time that, you know, struggling to overcome their blocks, clear their physical clutter, whatever it is, has become such a part of their identity of being in the chase, being in pursuit of that dream or that goal, that to actually accomplish it feels terrifying because I don't know how to be the person who has done it. I know how to be the person who wants to do it,
Right.
right?
That is
So
so.
we get into it's like, okay, so you are wrapped up in your identity of the pursuer and you don't know how to be the finisher. And so let's talk about finishing and what that would feel like.
And it's easier in some ways to stay in a negative circumstance because at least you know what to expect.
Exactly.
If
Yeah.
is the grass greener on the other side? Once I clean this, will I really be happy? There's a lot of
Mhm.
those kind of questioning things that happen within the mind. So you have those resistances that might be from childhood or might be from adulthood even.
Mhm. Sure.
Because you're a mess, you're a slob, you need to do this,
Yeah.
you need to do that. All of those words that are rattling around in them. But
Mhm.
in accomplishing the fact that they can honor that inner child, as it were, the one
Mhm.
that says, but I would rather play than do work.
Mhm.
that, all of those deflections, and then enter into, it is time.
Yeah.
And I decree it is time.
Mm-hmm.
Empowerment
Yeah,
is very strong.
absolutely. I mean, think about children. They will say that they don't like rules or restrictions or boundaries, but if there weren't any, they would feel unsafe. You don't feel cared for when
Mm,
they don't when they feel like they can't rely on their parents to keep them safe and they can just run wild and be free. Theoretically, that sounds amazing, right? But realistically, it's terrifying. I don't know where my parameters are. It's the same thing with this,
mhm.
right? We need to help that part of us feel like there are some gentle, loving parameters around what we will and won't do. And so by that's why I love the approach, I call them super small steps of tiny little steps to help you get into relationship, that part of you. It again, it's not so much about how much clutter can you clear, but how much can you deepen your trust with yourself and the relationship with yourself, because the stronger that is, the more you're going to believe yourself when you say, let's just do this for 30 minutes and see how it goes. Because if you say something like, and again, clutter can be anything, weight clutter is a very common form of clutter, right? So if you say, I'm going to start my diet on Monday, and then Monday comes and you're like, maybe next Monday, it's because your resistance is like, wait a minute, once we start, we are sentenced to a lifetime of carrot sticks and lettuce, right? And so it's like, no way. Your resistance cannot feel like it's being sentenced to anything. So that's why it's like, that's why in the recovery world, right? It's like one day at a time.
Right.
Because if you say, I'm never going to drink again, your resistance is like, I don't like that idea. But if it's like, I'm not going to drink today, it's like, I can try that.
So, in terms of clutter recovery,
Yeah.
that understanding that you might have to talk to yourself the way you would be as objective with yourself as you would with another person and say, well, do you want to clean this pile or that pile?
Mhm.
Orange or blue today?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're going to clean something. Let's pick between these two things and maybe
Yeah.
a baby step example. But
Exactly, exactly. Any kind of baby step of like, you know what? Let's just do this in an effort to see how it feels, and then we'll reevaluate. With my clients, and in my own life and in my own business, I use the Pomodoro technique all the time. So the Pomodoro technique sounds super fancy. It's not. It's just a time management technique, right? Pomodoro means tomato in Italian. And so this young gentleman many years ago created this when he was in university. He was having trouble getting his schoolwork done. So he thought, I'm just going to set a timer. And he used his mother's kitchen timer, which was a tomato. I'm going to use this timer. I'm going to set it for 25 minutes and I'm just going to work for 25 minutes and then I'll take a break. And so that became the Pomodoro technique. And so I shorten Pomodoro for ease to Palm rounds, POM, also because I like to think of it as peace of mind. So I'm like, let's just do one Palm round. I'll say to my resistance, or I'll say to my clients, how many Palm rounds do you want to commit to this week?
Mhm.
And that makes it, those are those gentle parameters.
Sure, sure. I think having it in those, that understanding of, okay, I'm committing to this.
Hmm.
It is not outrageous.
Right.
Be being hyper competitive, even though I might feel the onslaught of needing to do all of these things.
Hmm.
So it must be this delicate balance between trying to
Yeah.
find that which would be challenging enough to do,
Hmm.
not too challenging that they feel so overwhelmed that they'll
Right.
never, ever do it.
Yeah. And sometimes actually we want it to be so easy, it's more difficult to not do it.
Right.
It's more so I'll often say to people, if you are really struggling with this, break it down into a step that will take no more than 5 minutes to do.
Mhm.
Like super, super small if you have a lot of resistance to it. The example I often give, which is going to sound ridiculous, but this is what I mean. If I have to make a phone call that is maybe intimidating or scary, if I have to maybe set a boundary and I'm feeling a lot of resistance to it, I will reverse engineer that task to the smallest step. So it might be step one, I'm going to write the phone number down on a post-it note and stick it on my desk. Step one, showing my fear. Let's really baby step. Now I'm going to write down some notes about what I might say when I get on the phone. Then I'm going to reread it. Then I'm going to tweak it and revise it. Then I'm going to practice it on a loved one. Then I'm going to make the phone call and I'm going to have someone lined up right after for support. So, I mean, that's a pretty extreme example, but this is what I mean. Some things are much more loaded than we think. You know, that part of me that doesn't want to make the phone call can have some real conflict phobia. I don't want to hurt feelings. So, a lot of old spiritual clutter comes up and gets in my way of doing it. So, by holding my hand lovingly and gently breaking it down, that's when little Kerri can go, I can write the phone number down. I can draft a script. And then before you know it, it's my confidence and my trust is there to have the conversation.
Beautiful. I think that's a wonderful way to handle a lot of things that happen in life. If you're
Yes.
in that space, prepare for success in those small incremental ways. And
Hmm.
just as a reminder for those who are watching us live right now, write in with the comments some things that you feel that you have clutter problems with. It'd be kind of
Hmm.
interesting to see what people are having in terms of their own experiences, what you notice to be the messiest or most
Yeah.
resistant space for you.
Hmm.
Because in a little bit, I'm going to ask Kerri some questions about different spaces and see what she throws back at us too. I want you to put some comments in there about that and be prepared for some insight to come to you. And it might be applying some of these techniques that Kerri is so beautifully explaining.
Hmm.
So, in terms of like different spaces that a person has, do you notice that it matters whether it's in their dining room or their living room or their kitchen or their bedroom? Do you notice an energy difference for those things?
I do for sure. You know, it's interesting depending on where the clutter is, like you're talking about, or even the type of clutter you tend to accumulate, I can say a lot, right? And so the kind of themes that have emerged over the years, and really, you know, partly when I work with my clients, I'm kind of, you know, reading into it intuitively of like, okay, so you're telling me that your house is just immaculate until you go into your primary bedroom, and then that's where all the clutter stores. It's like, okay, so that tells me that for everybody else, you're everything's there. Like you're there for everyone, but when it comes to you, not so much. So clutter in the bedroom to me is going to say like, okay, we need to up the self-care. We need to move you as a priority higher up on your list. Uh, that's the kind of bedroom clutter eruption is your soul saying, hey, what about me?
Mm,
Right? Whereas something like kitchen clutter, you know, if you clear off that part of the counter and it just keeps getting messy, I would want to look at, you know, bedroom being the soul of the home, kitchen being the heart of the home. The kitchen, because it tends to be the gathering place, whether you live alone or not, if there's clutter in the kitchen, I want you to be looking at your primary relationships. What are the relationships that, you know, family, close friends, coworkers, even colleagues, what kind of boundaries are needed there? Because clutter is infiltrating a very common space in your home and a very like obvious space in your home. So the soul's tapping you a little bit louder when it comes to the kitchen. So kitchen, you know, look for those relationship type areas.
mhm,
And then finally, an example of like your home office or your desk. That is your money center, right? It's where your money beliefs are shown. It's where your self-confidence is displayed or lack thereof. So I would want you to look at, you know, how are my finances? How's my beliefs around money? How are my, you know, what do I tell myself about my abilities to thrive and live in abundance? So
mhm.
yes, depending on where it is, can be very telling to me about the spiritual message underneath it.
Yeah, I think those probably ring true for some people. And if that's you, put that in the comments because I think it's one of those things where first we have to admit, yes, that's me. That's
Yep.
And when you're relating to different, let's say you're sharing space and someone
Hmm.
else is bringing the clutter,
Yeah.
then what do you do?
It's tricky, right? So that becomes about boundaries in a couple different ways, right? So, you can't, the only time you can change someone is when they're in diapers. So you can't really, if you are living with a clutterer and you're not, um, then I want you to think about what is it that I need from this person? Because if you can't change the behavior, and you likely can't, talking to them about their clutter is talking to the symptom. Instead, there's two approaches I find that works when you live with someone who accumulates clutter. Uh, One is up your own clutter clearing game,
Mhm.
because I'll tell you, it is contagious. And the other person will be like, God, you seem like you have a pep in your step. You seem happier. Like, I want a taste of that. What are you doing? I'm just getting rid of stuff that is kind of weighing me down that I don't need anymore. And sometimes they can be inspired. Um, Other times when that doesn't happen, the conversation with the person needs to be less about the stuff and more about how it makes you feel and impacts your quality of life. So it's always great to come together, to invite the other person to come together and brainstorm a way to find a middle ground. So nagging someone else about their clutter never works. They're going to dig their heels in. But if you say, hey, listen, I know you like to collect whatever, or I know that part of the house doesn't really bother you. It really kind of stresses me out and it makes me almost feel like I'm suffocating. So I wondered if we could put our heads together and come up with a way that you can still have your stuff and I can still have my peace. Any ideas? And then you just kind of bat around some ideas. So talk about how it makes you feel
How it makes you
versus the
feel,
stuff.
that around the ideas, and then
Yep.
follow through would be the next part of
The
that.
follow through. Yes. And so then when, like any boundary, right? So that's an example of a nice, gentle, loving, compassionate boundary. Any boundary has to be followed with action. Otherwise, you're essentially saying, forget everything I said. I didn't really mean it. Carry on. But instead, it needs to be, remember last week when we talked about X? It's not really happening. Do we need to tweak that idea, or that kind of thing.
So at that point, there's that balancing act between, is this enforcement
Mhm.
or entrainment?
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
So there's that energy that somebody might have within themselves, or they might have with a person that they cohabitate with. And
Mhm.
so at that point, that I think that a lot of people, that is going to be one of their things. Right? Some of
Yeah.
the viewers here, that's going to be some of their strong point of not just following through for themselves, but following through in making sure they're not enabling cluttering behavior.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, when setting a boundary, I know sounds scary to people because it sounds really confrontational and sometimes harsh, but setting a boundary means that you care enough about a relationship to invest some work into it, right? So it's important to set that boundary and to ask for what you need in your relationship. If the other person is a clutterer, you can certainly talk to them. You can slide them my book. You can talk to them about, like, hey, um, let's look at why you're kind of hanging on to all this stuff. But it's tricky. You can just kind of gently nudge them, offer resources, that kind of thing. But yeah, you can't force anyone.
No one, not everyone is an analyzer of these things. Not everyone
Right.
wants to explore that side of themselves.
Yeah.
And
No.
they're like,
I get some eye rolls sometimes. It's like, can it just be papers? I'm like, nah, it could be, but it's probably not. You know?
right, right. And
Yeah.
that's where a life coach such as yourself really comes into play. You
Mhm.
at some point must go into the partner coaching for some
Yeah.
times for some of those, I imagine.
Yeah. Well, yeah, certainly. Well, what I'll do is help my clients come up with the language to have the conversation with their partner of, like, okay, kind of here's what's going on. And yes, there have been times in the past where someone's like, can you just explain that to my husband? Because I can't say it like you do. And I'm like, sure, if he wants to have a quick conversation, I'm happy to help him understand your feelings. But it's much more empowering to help someone craft their own language and go and have the conversation themselves. Uh, Yeah, I mean, it's because if someone says, "God, but I just think that they could be so much happier without their clutter," I'm like, well, "Wait a minute, let's come back to you."
Right.
You know, because they might seem fine. You might be projecting that they're not, but we always want to come back to ourselves.
Well, that leads us to another idea of, well, two ideas. One, people who want to collect more, what that says about them. But then the next step would be nostalgia. So can we talk about the idea of people wanting to collect more, even though they have enough,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, right. So that's worth looking at, right? So if you are someone who just wants to accumulate, 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 kind of almost as cliche as it sounds, like what void are you trying to fill? You know,
Mhm.
retail therapy is a real thing. I use it. It's like Amazon can have it on my door in 2 days. Like what? Um, so it's very enticing to just be like, I didn't know I needed a lamp, but this is only $25. I'm going to get the lamp. So it is enticing to collect more things. But again, like anything else, if you find that the collecting of things is impacting your quality of life at all, or the urge to continue to collect things, then it's not a healthy habit, right? Then it's like, what am I really looking for? Hoarding is a complete other conversation. That's a real anxiety disorder, right? Like that's a therapeutic issue. People toss that word around a lot. Like, people will say to me, "I'm such a hoarder," and I'll say, "Let's explore that." Because if you are, then I'm not the right fit. We need to get you to a therapist who can deal with anxiety disorders. But we call ourselves hoarders. Like, I'm an organized hoarder. I have stuff everywhere. And I get that, but it's like, wait a minute. Let's just see what your behavior really is like. And if you find that you just continue to collect things, I would want to know why that is. Um, I think about a past client of mine who he was married and he really wanted to get a divorce, and but he was torn. He had all this stuff in the house and he thought, I can't possibly get out of this marriage until I pare down my belongings. It would be too hard to move, etc. But he was so miserable in his divorce that one of the kind of dopamine fixes he got was from online shopping.
Oh
And
no.
so he would order something new to feel better about his marriage, and it would work for like a second, and then he would just be like, well, crap, now I just have more stuff around. And so he had this idea that he had to get rid of everything before he could possibly ask for a divorce. And I thought, you know what? Sometimes it happens in the opposite. What if we talk about the language to ask for this divorce? And when he did that, the weight off of his shoulders, he didn't feel compelled to shop anymore because he wasn't silencing this dissatisfaction.
Mhm.
Right? So I would want you to look at what is your motivation behind accumulating things when you know you already have enough.
In that case, it sounded to me a bit like self-sabotage, almost like
Mhm.
he wasn't able to divorce until he could, get his things out, so he would add more to it.
Yeah, to
So
avoid the conversation.
like,
Yeah.
if you're adding more to it, that means you want to
Mm.
stay in the marriage.
Right.
Right? Like,
Right?
and he probably,
Exactly.
oh, that's what I'm doing.
Yes. It's a clutter is a fantastic distraction technique. It's a fantastic scapegoat when we don't want to do something we have. I hear clients say all the time, you know what? I just need to get my office organized, then I'll really be able to market my business. And I'll say, okay, if you have any fears about marketing your business, you're going to keep your office messy
Mhm.
because you're telling yourself, I can't do that until I do this. Any of that, as soon as I
Mhm.
challenge that, you
Challenge that.
know, yeah, challenge the as soon as I and the one size.
Before we go to nostalgia, I just have to ask, what do you think of junk drawers and closets that accumulate junk where everything else can be clean in the house except for the junk
Yeah.
drawer or the junk closet, that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the reality of life is we have miscellaneous stuff. You know, I have a junk drawer in my kitchen. It's randomness. It's like what I'm not going to create a home just for the measuring tape. I'm not going to create a home just for some rubber bands or whatever,
Yes.
Junk drawers are going to be junk drawers. It's how many junk drawers do you have? How big is your junk drawer? Has your junk drawer turned into junk closets and junk rooms? That's the conversation of like, okay, wait a minute. Our stuff is now controlling us
Mhm.
instead of us being in charge of our stuff. So yes, it is likely unrealistic to expect yourself to live with every corner of your home neat as a pin, unless that works for you. But yeah, I think, give yourself some grace. It's okay to have a junk drawer.
I actually have an acquaintance who I remember with children and everything, she wouldn't let them have magazines in their home longer than 2 weeks. Books from the library weren't allowed to be there longer than 2 weeks. Like everything had to be spick and span. And so those children made sure that they were out of the house as much as they possibly could be because everything was being
Interesting.
micromonitored in terms of
Yeah.
cleanliness. So I mean that's another side that sometimes the people who are having a collection, this is like a defiance to that kind of
Mm-hmm.
way of life. That's the,
Sure.
oh yeah, I'm gonna leave this here and nobody's gonna tell me not to.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, our inner rebel comes out, right? So yeah, if you were raised in a household that was like, you can't go in that room. Don't go in that room. It's like your rebel can, when you grow up, can go, I am gonna do whatever I want. My house is gonna be a mess. Or, the hyper managed children can sometimes develop those OCD tendencies where it's like, if I'm not safe unless everything is just so, because that's how I was raised, right? So it's really tricky. That's why I think it's important to have some grace.
Yeah.
Um, but again, you get to decide for yourself, when is too much? When is it impacting your happiness, your joy, your daily living? When it's like, okay, this is not grace anymore. This is just stress.
So let's talk about nostalgia and sentimental
Mm,
items. You know,
yeah.
I remember even as a child cleaning my room, and I would pause cleaning because I was like, oh, look what I found. I found this thing I wrote, or I found this, this item that I hadn't seen, or this book. There are all kinds of things. Or clothing. Oh,
Mhm.
I forgot I had this shirt. You
Yeah.
seem to almost have this attachment to things, especially if they have family heirlooms,
Hmm.
that sort of energy. How would you address the nostalgia or sentimental, the things that can throw us off track from keep going on the clutter busting on things?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it's really lovely and okay to pause and reflect on what memory that item exudes for you, what it drums up for you. If you feel compelled to keep everything that you deem sentimental, then I would just encourage people to challenge that. You know, the memory you have lives in your heart, not in the item, right? So it's with you always. I often say to my members or clients, if you're struggling to get rid of your children's baby clothes, let's say, or their childhood toys, and I said to you, hey, tell me about your daughter. What was her childhood like? You would just start telling me about her childhood. You wouldn't say, hold on, let me go up in the attic and get her belongings so I can remember and tell you,
Right.
right? You'd be able to just tell me what your child's young years were like. So that really speaks to the power of the memories lie within your heart and your soul. You don't need the physical items. Now, having said that, I'm not saying you have to get rid of everything sentimental. I have a small box of memories, some things from college and that I like to open every now and then and just take a peek at. But sometimes if I need a visual reminder, then I'll just take a photograph of it and I'll have like a digital photo album of memories that I'll then look at things and I'll be able to revisit those times. But we don't need to keep everything. People keep things out of guilt, out of obligation, out of fear of appearing ungrateful or disrespectful or disloyal. So again, that comes to the core soul clutter of beliefs.
Hmm.
It's okay. I give an example in my first book, What Your Clutter is Trying to Tell You, about a music box that my father gave me. And I loved this music box because of the day that it reminded me. He was up visiting, and we were with my mother, and we were out poking around some shops, and we got into the car. And I remember he was in the front seat and he turned around and he had a brown bag in his hand from the store. And he said, here you go, kid. I thought you might like this. And it was just a wooden music box that played a beautiful song. And I thought, I was so touched by him thinking of me. I immediately got home, put it on my desk, and I loved it forever. It fell one day, thanks to my cat, and it smashed, and it was really irreparable. I couldn't fix it no matter what I wanted to. So I kept the pieces of it on my desk for a good long while because I was like, "Oh, I don't want to forget that day." And then I thought, Kerri, you know what? You can remember that day so clearly, like a movie in your mind, like it happened yesterday. The broken pieces on the desk are now becoming sad, and they're making you feel differently about that experience. So I got rid of the music box, and while part of me was sad about it, and I know some can say it was easier to get rid of because it was broken, but I can still, I'm talking, this was probably 10 years ago. I can still picture the parking lot, the car, him turning around, handing me the bag. It is imprinted in my soul. I didn't need the music box to still have that lovely memory.
Very true. Very true. And so there are people that would say, I should still keep that because I might be able to fix it somehow
Mhm.
someday.
Yeah,
I might be
someday.
able to do that. So how do you handle the someday?
Yeah, I call that I might need this someday syndrome, where people are like, I can't get rid of this. I might need it someday. That to me, as a coach, I want to look at your level of self trust. So, what I'll say to people is, okay, let's imagine that you got rid of that item and that someday came and you did need it, but you have gotten rid of it. Tell me what you would do. Let's brainstorm some ideas of what you would do. Well, I'd feel really crappy, or I guess I would just buy it again, or I would ask someone if I could borrow theirs. I'd be really disappointed in myself. Great. That's what we want to focus on. It's like, can you love yourself enough um, to be like, okay, I made the decision. I made the decision. This is a ridiculous example because it's not sentimental, but we just moved from a tiny house of 240 square feet back into a traditional home of a whopping 1,000 square feet. So I was making a salad last week, right? I'm partying in my mansion. I was making I was making a salad last week, and the little tiny salad spinner that I used in the tiny house was just a piece of junk. It was just awful. But I fought with it because I didn't only had so much storage space in the tiny house, right? And yes, I know I could just wash the lettuce and pat it dry. I get it. I like using salad spinners. So I thought I need a bigger salad spinner. And then I was like, Kerri, you are buying the exact one you donated 4 years ago. Like, this is ridiculous. And I went, yeah, but you know what? I didn't need it for the last 4 years. So I had to just give myself some grace and be like, yeah, you know what? Could I have saved that and kept it in storage and dealt with it for the 4 years? Sure. But is my peace of mind worth the $20 I'm going to spend to replace it? Yes. So silly example, but still the same of like, sometimes you're going to get rid of things that you then later regret. Can you still love yourself through that process?
I think that's a great story.
Isn't that ridiculous?
Because I think we've all been there. And like, especially
Yeah.
if your favorite item broke, right? Like you had this
Yes.
music box, one of your favorite items, and then you're thinking, I need to have one just like this. You know how you're
Yeah.
thinking, I need to buy more than one pair of these shoes
Oh,
because
yeah.
to find this pair of shoes that I feel comfortable in and look good, they're going to
Mhm.
stop making that style.
Yeah.
So you think
Yeah.
you need to buy more of those shoes. So it's
Mhm.
the idea of, do I stock myself up and equip so I know that I'm happy with that? Or do I say,
Mhm.
you know what, I'll find more shoes that will fit me and that I will have
Yeah.
beauty in. And then and the thing
Yeah.
I have let go with love or light or some resistance as someone
Mhm.
pries them from my fingers, that I
Yeah.
need to let myself enter into a state of grace. I
Yeah.
think.
I will be okay, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, so what are your thoughts in terms of, the yard sales and garage sales and
Mm.
those thrift store find things that people do? Because, in terms of decluttering, the spiritual energy then to shift that out of your own home and into someone
Mm.
else's. Tell me what you think about that.
Yeah, well, from both ends of it. So back in the day, I loved to run a good yard sale. I like the whole conversation, the talking with people, the seeing people leave with items that I used to love that they now love. I don't love them anymore, running them, that is. Uh, because a lot of people ask me, like, should I sell my stuff? Should I donate my stuff? What should I do with it? Again, really personal preference. Think about what is the amount that you would need to get for something that would make it worth the energy it takes to sell it. So the last yard sale I ran, which was many years ago, I had downsized significantly already because, tiny house. But I still had some things. My sister was having a yard sale and I thought I'll throw up a couple tables. The amount of time we spent preparing for it, sorting through our stuff, deciding on a price, setting it up, displaying it, talking with people. When I calculated the number of hours I spent versus what I made like $1.25 an hour. And I thought, my time's more valuable than that. So that's why I don't run them anymore. As far as shopping, the temptation to grab something at a thrift store or at a yard sale, I get it. I mean, I am all about the secondhand economy. I love the idea of repurposing things. So yes, I go to yard sales. Like having moved into this house now, I needed, yard tools. I didn't have that in the tiny house, right? So it was like I could go to the hardware store for a pitchfork for my composting pile and pay $25, or I can go to this yard sale and pay 5 and it's still a perfectly fine pitchfork. So it's being selective about what are the things that I need
Mhm.
and is there a place I can get it secondhand that would be just smarter for the world and my pocketbook. So but again, we don't want to do like impulse shopping of like just browsing thrift stores and yard sales and accumulating stuff you don't need.
And that is a spiritual, energetic understanding. You have to say, is
Mhm.
this in my highest and best good? Yes or no?
Yes.
And to begin with, people might have to take it to that level of that spiritual understanding of the soul instead of asking their head or their heart at points. So
Yes.
really start to gauge that. And then if they regress, go back into the, is this in my highest and best good? Or like Marie
Mhm.
Kondo says, does this bring me joy?
Does this bring me joy? And really, that's the thing. Like your spirit and your soul will never steer you wrong. Your head will. And it's tricky because your head comes in so fast. When you tap into your soul and ask for guidance, it's there and it's waiting for you. The head comes in so fast. So it's worth practicing having that connection with your spirit and your soul and recognizing the very first response that comes up and capturing it before the head can come in and negate it.
Yes. And if someone's asking a question about mental clutter,
Hmm.
people have this clutter in the mind, all those closets of their mind, so to speak.
Yes.
And so do you find that as they're clearing the clutter in the physical, that then affects them on a mental level?
Yeah, it really can. Mental clutter can be its own thing, right? So I always recommend to my clients, and I do the same, I'll do what I call a mind dump. When my mind is feeling really busy and racy and I have a lot of mental clutter, I'm feeling just pulled in a lot of different directions, I'll just grab a notebook and a pen and I'll take 5 to 10 minutes and I will empty everything that's in my brain onto the page. I'm not making a to-do list. It's not organized. Sometimes it's not even legible, to be real, but I'm just scribbling it down because our brains are an amazing computer, but we use them as a container. And like any other hard drive, when you have too many files in there, it's going to slow down the processing speed,
Mhm.
right? So we've got to empty it. When we do, we have greater access to our creativity, our resourcefulness, our decision making abilities. And, particularly right now, as the world opens up more and more, I don't know about you all, but I feel like I'm drinking from an energetic fire hose. Like it is just so loud, the energy. I'm having trouble holding on to thoughts. I forgot how to socialize. It's a very strange time in the world. And actually, my friend and colleague Dougal Fraser and I are running a workshop next Wednesday, the 30th, on organizing your energy.
Oh,
Um, and it's just that it's about how can we uh, reclaim our energy and our mental space, quiet down that clutter because yes, you are going to handle your environment better when your mental clutter isn't running the show.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
and you can just go to my website for the workshop.
Go
It's
to
on there.
kerryricardson.com.
GaryRichardson.com.
You can check it out there. And I think that's a great opportunity for people to really understand some of that because, as a clutter coach, that's what I'm calling.
Hmm. Yeah.
that you're dealing with it on all of those different levels.
Yeah, spiritual clutter, energetic clutter, mental clutter. The physical clutter is the least of it, but we think it's the most. I'm telling you, that is just a byproduct
Mm.
of the spiritual and mental clutter that needs our attention.
And working through those attachments and really, it does take stirring up the mud, like you said earlier,
Yeah.
the beast a little bit, stir
Mm-hmm.
mud so that that you can clear it,
Yes.
be more aware of what you're bringing into your space and allowing in your space. And like you said,
Yeah.
those boundaries are
They're
so
so important.
important.
You know, our time in the day, right? Time, energy, and bandwidth and space, all finite,
Mhm.
right? So I'll often say, think of your table, think of your life as a sacred table, and who or what is worthy of having a seat
That's
at
right.
it, right? It's like I only have so much space available in my life. Who and what is worthy of occupying a space, and only the best candidates need apply.
There we go. Beautifully stated. Well, on that note, I will say thank you so much for being here today, Kerri. It's just really
Thank you.
cool to explore this. I think people got a lot out of it, clearing spiritual clutter, and it's going to give them that understanding you gave earlier on. If people had joined us a little bit later, just to reiterate, Kerri did give some steps for things in terms of how to go about clearing some of the spiritual energetic clutter.
Mm.
And you can go back and listen to this again if you need it a second time, or third time, or however many times you. And certainly reach out to Kerri Richardson if you'd like some further help, and check out her books that she has about clearing that clutter from your life. Thank you so much for being here today. And just as a reminder to everyone, Lilydale summer season starts this Friday, June 25th. You can find the full schedule of events on lilydaleassembly.org. And if you haven't booked, you're planning to come, you haven't booked a reading with a medium of your choice, you better call now because many of us are almost completely booked. So you want to make sure that you get things taken care of well in advance of you coming to Lilydale. So great to have you here on the show. Thanks again,
Thank
Kerri.
you. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye bye, everyone.